What if I told you that in the next 45 minutes, you're going to watch security footage of a man's final moments before he vanished from the face of the earth? Footage that has been analyzed frame by millions of people, yet still holds secrets that no one can unlock. This isn't just another missing person case. This is the story that turned an entire generation into digital detectives. A case so bizarre, so haunting, that it spawned thousands of theories, countless sleepless nights, and an obsession that continues to grow nearly a decade later. But here's what makes this story absolutely bone-chilling. We have it all on camera. Every terrifying second. Every panicked step. Every desperate moment before a young man ran into the wilderness and disappeared forever. Yet somehow, having all this evidence makes the mystery even deeper. Welcome to the case that will redefine what you think you know about disappearances. Because this isn't a story about someone who simply went missing. This is about a vacation that became a nightmare, a routine trip that ended in terror, and 28-year-old whose final phone call to his mother still haunts everyone who hears about it. This is the Lars Mittank mystery, the case that proves that in our surveillance-heavy, connected world, people can still vanish into thin air. That sometimes having all the evidence in the world still isn't enough. And that the most important question of all, what happened, might never have an answer. So before we dive into this rabbit hole, I need to warn you, this story will change you. It will make you question every vacation you've ever taken, every time you've been alone in a foreign country, every moment you felt that creeping sensation that something isn't right. Because Lars Mittank felt that sensation too. And his response to it was captured on camera for the world to see. The question is, was he running from something real, or something that existed only in his mind? Let's find out. Summer 2014. For 28-year-old Lars Mittank, a power plant worker from Berlin, life was exactly where it should be. He had a stable job, a loving girlfriend, and the kind of predictable German existence that provided security and comfort. But like many young Europeans, Lars craved adventure, sun, and the kind of carefree vacation that could only be found in the beach resorts of Eastern Europe. Bulgaria's Golden Sands resort beckoned with its promise of cheap drinks, beautiful beaches, and the kind of rowdy vacation atmosphere that German tourists had been flocking to for decades. Lars and his 4 friends had planned this trip for months. It was going to be their annual boys' trip, 5 days of pure hedonistic fun before returning to the mundane reality of adult responsibilities. What none of them could have predicted was that this routine vacation would become one of the internet's most obsessed over mysteries, a case that would spawn thousands of theories, countless YouTube videos, and a level of online investigation that would make Lars Mittank a household name for all the wrong reasons. The trip started exactly as planned. The group checked into their hotel, hit the bars, soaked up the sun, and lived the typical tourist experience. For the first few days, everything was perfect. Lars was relaxed, happy, and seemingly enjoying every moment of his Bulgarian adventure. But something was about to go very, very wrong. June 30th, 2014. What should have been just another night of vacation drinking became the moment that everything started to unravel for Lars Mittank. The group was at a local bar, drinks flowing, music pumping, and the atmosphere electric with that particular energy that comes with being young, drunk, and on vacation in a foreign country. But then, as often happens when alcohol and testosterone mix, a confrontation erupted. The details of the fight remain murky, different witnesses provided different accounts, and the chaos of a crowded bar at night makes reliable testimony difficult. What we know for certain is that Lars got into an altercation with some other German tourists. It wasn't a massive brawl, it wasn't life-threatening, but it was significant enough that Lars sustained an injury to his ear. Here's where the story takes its first strange turn. Lars became convinced that the men he had fought with were actually Bayern Munich football fans, and that they were now actively pursuing him. This wasn't just post-fight paranoia. Lars became genuinely, deeply afraid that these men were hunting him down. His friends tried to reassure him. Lars, it was just a bar fight. These things happen on vacation. Let's get your ear checked out and continue having fun. But Lars wasn't having it. Something about this encounter had triggered a level of fear and paranoia that was completely disproportionate to what had actually happened. The injury to his ear required medical attention, so the group took Lars to a local clinic. The doctor examined him and prescribed antibiotics for the infection that was developing. Everything seemed routine, a minor vacation mishap that would be forgotten within a week. But Lars was not forgetting. If anything, his paranoia was intensifying. July 6, 2014. The vacation was coming to an end, and Lars's friends were ready to return to Germany. They had flights booked, jobs to return to, and real life calling them back home. But Lars had a problem. He couldn't fly. The doctor had advised him not to fly due to his ear injury and the risk of complications from changes in air pressure. It was a standard medical precaution, nothing dramatic, nothing unusual. Thousands of travelers deal with similar situations every year. The solution was simple: stay an extra few days until the ear healed, then catch a later flight home. His friends offered to stay with him. They were concerned about leaving Lars alone, especially given his increasingly paranoid behavior over the past few days. But Lars insisted they go ahead without him. "I'll be fine," he told them. "I'll see you back in Berlin in a few days." This decision, his friends leaving while Lars stayed behind alone, would haunt everyone involved for years to come. In hindsight, it seems like the moment when everything could have been prevented. But at the time, it seemed reasonable. Lars was an adult, he was in a safe tourist area, and he would only be alone for a couple of days. His friends reluctantly departed for Germany, leaving Lars alone in Bulgaria with a plan to fly home once his ear had healed. They had no way of knowing they would never see their friend again. The next few days revealed just how much Lars's mental state had deteriorated since the bar fight. Alone in his hotel, without the stabilizing presence of his friends, Lars's paranoia began to consume him completely. He became convinced that the men from the bar fight were staying in the same hotel. He believed they were watching him, following him, and planning to harm him. Hotel staff later reported that Lars had approached them multiple times, asking about the other guests, requesting room changes, and displaying behavior that was increasingly erratic and concerning. But here's what makes this case so chilling. Was Lars experiencing a mental health crisis, or was he actually being followed? The rational explanation is that the stress of being alone in a foreign country, combined with the ear injury and possibly the antibiotics he was taking, had triggered some kind of psychological episode. However, some witnesses later claimed they did see men who matched Lars's description of his supposed pursuers. Were these the same men from the bar fight? Were they actually following him? Or was Lars's paranoia causing him to see threats that weren't really there? This ambiguity is what makes the Lars Mittank case so compelling to internet investigators. Every piece of evidence can be interpreted multiple ways, and every rational explanation leaves room for doubt. As Lars's behavior became more erratic, he reached out for help. But instead of contacting his friends or family back in Germany, he did something that would later seem either remarkably prescient or deeply troubling. He sought psychiatric help. Lars contacted a psychiatrist and described his situation. He explained about the bar fight, his fears of being followed, and his inability to shake the feeling that he was in genuine danger. The psychiatrist, working with limited information and without the benefit of knowing Lars's normal personality, prescribed him psychiatric medication to help with his anxiety and paranoid thoughts. This is where conspiracy theorists and internet sleuths really dig their teeth into the case. The medication Lars was prescribed can have serious side effects, including increased anxiety, confusion, and in rare cases, psychotic episodes. Was the medication meant to help Lars, or did it actually make his condition worse? What we know for certain is that after starting the medication, Lars's behavior became even more erratic. He called his mother back in Germany, and what he told her during that conversation would become one of the most chilling pieces of evidence in the entire case. The phone call Lars made to his mother on July 8, 2014, has been analyzed, dissected, and theorized about more than any piece of audio evidence in recent memory. It wasn't recorded, so we only have his mother's account of what was said, but her description of that conversation is absolutely terrifying. According to his mother, Lars was barely recognizable as her son. His voice was different, strained, panicked, and filled with a fear she had never heard before. He told her that people were trying to hurt him, that he couldn't trust anyone, and that he was in serious danger. But the most chilling part of the conversation was when Lars told his mother, "If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident." Think about that for a moment. A young man, alone in a foreign country, calls his mother to essentially predict his own demise. He wasn't just expressing anxiety or vacation stress, he was giving his mother a warning about his potential murder. His mother immediately tried to calm him down, to talk him through whatever he was experiencing. She offered to fly to Bulgaria to bring him home. She suggested he go directly to the German embassy. She gave him all the practical advice that a concerned parent would give. But Lars seemed beyond rational help. The conversation ended with him promising to come home soon, but his mother was left with the terrible feeling that her son was in genuine peril. July 8, 2014. Varna Airport, Bulgaria. Lars Mittank arrives to catch his flight back to Germany. Finally, after days of paranoia and erratic behavior, he's taking the steps to get home safely. Everything should have been fine from this point forward. But airport security footage reveals that Lars was far from fine. The cameras show a young man who appears agitated, nervous, and constantly looking over his shoulder. He's moving through the airport like someone who believes he's being hunted. Lars checked in for his flight without incident. He went through security successfully. He made it to the departure area where he would wait for his flight to board. By all accounts, he was less than an hour away from being safely on a plane back to Germany. And then something happened that changed everything. According to witnesses, Lars was sitting in the departure area when he suddenly became extremely agitated. He started looking around frantically, as if he had seen something or someone that terrified him. Other passengers later reported that he seemed to be staring at a specific group of people, though no one could identify who or why. What happened next was captured on airport security cameras, and the footage would become some of the most analyzed security footage in internet history. The security footage from Varna Airport shows something that defies rational explanation. At 2:11 p.m. on July 8, 2014, Lars Mittank suddenly stands up from his seat in the departure area, drops his luggage, and begins running. But this wasn't a casual jog or even a hurried walk to catch a flight. This was a full sprint, panic-fueled run of someone who believed their life was in immediate danger. Lars ran through the departure area, past confused passengers and airport staff, heading directly for the exit. Keep in mind, Lars was in the secure area of the airport. He had already gone through security. He was about to board a flight home. There was no rational reason for him to leave the airport at this point, let alone to leave by running in a blind panic. The footage shows Lars bursting out of the airport terminal and continuing to run across the tarmac. Airport security immediately began pursuing him, but Lars had a head start and was running like his life depended on it. But here's where the story becomes truly surreal. Instead of running toward the road or trying to find help, Lars ran directly to the airport perimeter fence. This wasn't a small fence, it was a substantial barrier designed to keep people out of restricted areas. But Lars didn't hesitate. He scaled that fence like an Olympic athlete and disappeared into the wilderness beyond. The last confirmed sighting of Lars Mittank was him disappearing over that airport fence into the Bulgarian countryside. He hasn't been seen since. Within hours of Lars's disappearance, a massive search operation was launched. Bulgarian authorities, German embassy officials, search and rescue teams, and volunteers scoured the area around Varna Airport looking for any trace of the missing German tourist. They had helicopters searching from the air, ground teams combing through forests and fields, and investigators interviewing every possible witness. The search covered hundreds of square kilometers and lasted for weeks. They found nothing. No clothing, no personal items, no signs that Lars had ever been in the area. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air after scaling that airport fence. But the internet was just getting started with its own investigation. The Lars Mittank case was perfectly designed to become an internet obsession. It had everything: mysterious circumstances, clear video evidence, international intrigue, and enough ambiguity to fuel endless theories. YouTube videos analyzing the airport security footage frame by frame began appearing within days of the disappearance. Reddit communities formed specifically to discuss Lars's case. Facebook groups dedicated to finding him attracted thousands of members from around the world. Internet sleuths began their own investigations. They analyzed satellite imagery of the area where Lars disappeared. They created detailed timelines of his activities in Bulgaria. They tracked down and interviewed people who had interacted with Lars during his final days. Some online investigators became convinced that Lars had been murdered by the men from the bar fight. Others believed he had suffered a complete mental breakdown and was hiding somewhere in the Bulgarian wilderness. Still others developed elaborate conspiracy theories involving everything from organ trafficking to international espionage. Nearly a decade later, the theories about what happened to Lars Mittank continue to evolve and multiply. Here are the main schools of thought. The mental health crisis theory. This is the most widely accepted explanation among law enforcement and mental health professionals. According to this theory, the combination of the head injury from the bar fight, the stress of being alone in a foreign country, and possibly the psychiatric medication triggered a severe psychological episode. Lars became completely detached from reality, fled the airport in a panic, and either died by suicide or suffered an accident while wandering in the wilderness. The murder theory. Many internet investigators believe Lars was killed by the men from the bar fight, and that his paranoia was actually justified. According to this theory, these men had been stalking Lars, possibly followed him to the airport, and he recognized them in the departure area. His flight from the airport was a desperate attempt to escape, but they caught up with him in the wilderness and killed him. The witness protection theory. Some conspiracy theorists believe Lars witnessed something during his vacation, possibly a crime or illegal activity, and was either killed to silence him or forced to disappear into witness protection. This theory attempts to explain why no body has ever been found. The voluntary disappearance theory. A minority of investigators believe Lars staged his own disappearance, possibly due to debts, relationship problems, or other personal issues. According to this theory, his erratic behavior was an act, and he's living somewhere under a new identity. The trafficking theory. Perhaps the most disturbing theory suggests Lars was kidnapped for human trafficking purposes. Bulgaria has been identified as a transit country for human trafficking, and some investigators believe Lars's disappearance fits the pattern of trafficking operations. What makes the Lars Mittank case so frustrating is that every piece of evidence can be interpreted multiple ways, and nothing provides a definitive answer. The airport footage. The security camera footage clearly shows Lars running from the airport in panic, but it doesn't show what caused his panic or what happened to him after he scaled the fence. The phone call. His mother's account of their final conversation suggests Lars was in genuine fear for his life, but it could also indicate a severe mental health crisis. The medication. The psychiatric medication Lars was prescribed could have helped his anxiety or made it dramatically worse. Both scenarios are medically possible. The bar fight. The altercation that started everything could have been a random vacation incident or the beginning of a deadly stalking situation. The missing body. The fact that no remains have ever been found could mean Lars is still alive somewhere, or it could simply mean his body is well hidden in the vast Bulgarian wilderness. For Lars's family, particularly his mother Sandra, the past 9 years have been a nightmare of uncertainty and false hope. She has traveled to Bulgaria numerous times, worked with private investigators, and maintained contact with internet communities investigating her son's case. Sandra Mittank has appeared in documentaries, given interviews, and never stopped believing that her son might still be alive somewhere. She's followed up on hundreds of tips and possible sightings, each one raising her hopes before ultimately leading nowhere. The family has offered substantial rewards for information leading to Lars's whereabouts, and they continue to update his missing person profiles on social media platforms around the world. But perhaps most heartbreakingly, Sandra has had to watch as her son's disappearance became entertainment for millions of people online. While she's grateful for the attention the case receives, she's also had to endure conspiracy theories, cruel speculation, and the constant reminder that somewhere out there, people are discussing her son's potential death as if it were a puzzle to be solved. The Lars Mittank case represents a turning point in how missing person cases are investigated in the digital age. Never before had so many people with access to powerful analytical tools focused their attention on a single disappearance. Google Earth satellite imagery was scoured for any signs of Lars or his remains. Social media posts from tourists who were in Bulgaria during the relevant time period were analyzed for background clues. Flight records, hotel registrations, and even credit card transactions were examined by amateur investigators with surprising skill and dedication. This crowdsourced investigation model has since been applied to numerous other missing person cases, with varying degrees of success. The Lars Mittank case proved that the collective power of internet investigation could uncover information that traditional law enforcement might miss, but it also demonstrated the dangers of unverified theories and false accusations. Why has the Lars Mittank case captured the internet's imagination so completely? Psychologists and social media experts point to several factors. Visual evidence. The airport security footage provides a clear, dramatic moment that viewers can watch and analyze repeatedly. Unlike many missing person cases that involve speculation about events no one witnessed, Lars's disappearance was partially captured on camera. International intrigue. The case involves multiple countries, foreign languages, and the kind of exotic location that feels both familiar, a tourist destination, and dangerous, Eastern Europe with its history of crime and corruption. Perfect ambiguity. Every piece of evidence in the case can be interpreted multiple ways, allowing internet investigators to develop and defend their own theories without being definitively proven wrong. Relatable protagonist. Lars was an ordinary young man on a routine vacation, something millions of people can relate to. His disappearance taps into universal fears about traveling alone and being vulnerable in foreign countries. The participation factor. Unlike traditional mysteries that are solved by professionals, the Lars Mittank case allows anyone with internet access to become an investigator and potentially discover the crucial clue that solves everything. While the massive online attention has kept Lars's case alive when it might otherwise have been forgotten, it has also created problems. False leads. The case has generated thousands of false tips and supposed sightings, overwhelming law enforcement and giving false hope to Lars's family. Conspiracy theories. Wild theories about government cover-ups, international crime syndicates, and elaborate murder plots have spread faster than factual information. Harassment. Some internet investigators have harassed people who were in Bulgaria at the same time as Lars, accusing innocent tourists of being involved in his disappearance. Exploitation. The case has been used to generate revenue through YouTube videos, podcasts, and books, raising ethical questions about profiting from tragedy. Misinformation. Facts about the case have become distorted as they've been shared and reshared across different platforms, making it difficult to separate verified information from speculation. Despite the passage of nearly a decade, the official investigation into Lars Mittank's disappearance remains technically open. Bulgarian authorities continue to follow up on credible leads, and the German government maintains diplomatic pressure to keep the case active. New technologies have been applied to the search efforts over the years. Ground-penetrating radar has been used in areas where investigators believe Lars might have traveled. Advanced computer analysis has been applied to the airport security footage to extract every possible detail. But the harsh reality is that without new physical evidence, a body, personal items, or credible witness testimony, the case is unlikely to be solved through traditional investigative methods. The Lars Mittank case has had a measurable impact on how people think about travel safety, particularly for solo travelers in foreign countries. Medical precautions. More travelers now research the potential side effects of medications prescribed abroad and seek second opinions for significant medical decisions while traveling. Communication protocols. Many people now establish regular check-in schedules with family and friends when traveling alone, inspired by the realization that Lars's disappearance might have been prevented with better communication. Mental health awareness. The case has raised awareness about how stress, injury, and unfamiliar environments can trigger mental health crises even in people with no history of psychological problems. Documentation. Travelers are more likely to document their activities, whereabouts, and the people they meet, understanding that this information could be crucial if something goes wrong. After 9 years of investigation, analysis, and speculation, the fundamental questions about Lars Mittank's disappearance remain unanswered. What caused his panic at the airport? Did he see someone he recognized as a threat, or was he experiencing a hallucination brought on by his mental state? Was he actually being followed? Were his fears justified, or were they the product of paranoia and psychological distress? What happened after he scaled the fence? Did he continue running into the wilderness, or was someone waiting for him on the other side? Is he still alive? Could Lars have survived in the Bulgarian countryside for days, weeks, or even months after his disappearance? Was this planned? Is there any possibility that Lars's disappearance was intentional and he's living somewhere under a new identity? These questions continue to fuel discussion and investigation, ensuring that Lars Mittank's name remains relevant in true crime communities around the world. The Lars Mittank case has become more than just an unsolved disappearance. It's become a cultural phenomenon that illustrates the power and problems of internet-age investigation. On the positive side, the case has demonstrated how crowdsourced investigation can keep cold cases alive, raised awareness about mental health issues and travel safety, shown how social media can be used to spread information about missing persons, created a template for how online communities can organize around solving mysteries. On the negative side, it has shown how speculation can be confused with facts, demonstrated the potential for harassment and false accusations, illustrated how tragedy can be turned into entertainment, revealed the limitations of amateur investigation when not properly coordinated. As we approach the 10-year anniversary of Lars Mittank's disappearance, the brutal truth is that we may never know what happened to him. The Bulgarian wilderness where he vanished is vast and remote. If he died there, either by accident or by violence, his remains could be scattered by animals, buried by vegetation, or hidden in places that will never be searched. But the internet doesn't give up easily. New theories continue to emerge, new analysis of the existing evidence still appears regularly, and Lars's case remains one of the most discussed unsolved mysteries online. Perhaps that's Lars Mittank's ultimate legacy, not the vacation that went wrong, not the mysterious disappearance, but the proof that in the digital age, no missing person is ever truly forgotten. Somewhere out there, someone is still watching that airport security footage, still analyzing his final phone call, still believing they might be the one to finally solve the mystery. The young German man who just wanted a fun vacation with his friends has become immortal in the worst possible way, forever frozen in that moment of panic, forever running from something we can't see, forever disappearing into a mystery that may never be solved. But maybe that's exactly what makes the Lars Mittank case so compelling. In a world where information is instantly available and every question seems to have an answer, his disappearance reminds us that some mysteries are bigger than our ability to understand them. Lars Mittank ran into the unknown on July 8, 2014, and 9 years later, that's exactly where he remains, in the unknown, in the space between facts and theories, in the gap between what we can prove and what we fear might be true. His case will continue to haunt the internet because it represents something deeper than just one man's disappearance. It represents every traveler's worst nightmare, every parent's deepest fear, and every investigator's most frustrating puzzle. The man who vanished into thin air may never be found, but his story will never be forgotten. And somewhere in Bulgaria, the wilderness keeps its secrets, while the world keeps asking, what happened to Lars Mittank?